fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, here to bring you what you all really want, right? You want another Falcons 2023 mock draft, all 7 rounds. Of course you do. Even more interesting, of course, now that the Falcons have made a trade for cornerback Jeff Okudah of the Lions, former number 3 overall pick. So we'll get into that a little bit on this too, although if you want a deeper dive into that, we did look at that on last Wednesday's Falcoholic Live, where I had Eric Robinson and Will McFadden join me for a live mock as well as some trade talk. Definitely check that out. Welcome in everyone to the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast as well. As always, like, subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to that podcast audio, please do give us that 5-star review. And if you haven't listened to Wednesday's live yet, did have a big announcement there that the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast, as well as Falcoholic Live, will now be published by the Believe Podcast Network. Really excited to start working with those guys. Nothing is really going to change with the show. Maybe some minor logo adjustments, right? Get some Believe branding in here. There will be ad reads returning, right? So I know everyone was probably enjoying the universal ad-free shows. Obviously, you can still get those by subscribing to our Patreon, patreon.com/falcoholiclive. But really excited to work with those guys. Gonna lead to a lot of great guests on the show, especially during the season. And really excited to get going there. So I wanted to share that on the podcast as well as live for everyone out there. But let's get into this draft. Of course, the big change will be that the Falcons no longer have that 5th round pick from the Jaguars that was sent to the Lions as a part of the Jeff Okudah trade, and probably does lower the chances that the Falcons consider Jeff Okudah or not Jeff Okudah, but, a cornerback at 8, right? I don't think it takes them out of the running for a corner there, depending on how the board falls. But I also don't know how they value the cornerback class. Do they like Christian Gonzalez and Devon Witherspoon equally? Because it seems pretty likely now that the Lions will be taking a corner. So in that case, the Falcons could have their preferred option of those picks gone. And in that scenario, probably going in a different direction either way. So interested to see how that plays out, how that affects things, but I don't think that the Jeff Okudah trade takes the Falcons out of the cornerback market in the draft. Certainly not entirely. I still expect them to add a corner fairly early, probably, in that late day 2, early day 3 range at the latest, because the depth chart still needs help, and Okudah's here for one more year. He's here for basically on a 1-year deal, right? I don't think the Falcons are going to pick up his 5th-year option. If he has a great season, he's probably getting big money, and the Falcons probably aren't going to be giving Okudah and Terrell big extensions this year, right? Well, in 2024. So in that scenario, Okudah's probably walking. If Okudah has like a decent season, maybe you do re-sign him to a reasonable extension, but even then, there's still room for better depth. And, Casey Hayward, is he going to be on the roster at the end of training camp? This is the last year of his contract too. So a lot of opportunity here for the Falcons to make some additional moves, add to the depth at corner, because it is a position where you're going to need guys to play. Your guys further down the depth chart are going to get on the field at one point. Injuries happen at this position as frequently, maybe at the highest rate of any position. It's certainly up there. So you have to have a deep group. But this is a deep cornerback class. It's a good opportunity for the Falcons to still add, and I think that will be the case. So before we dive in to the actual Falcons picks, let me tell you guys the first 7 picks of this mock draft. So pick 1, the Carolina Panthers took quarterback Bryce Young from Alabama. That is a pick that's gaining some steam. Pick 2, Houston Texans take quarterback CJ Stroud out of Ohio State. Pick 3, the Arizona Cardinals. The AI and the Draft Network's mock draft machine will not trade with itself. I do think the Cardinals are going to trade this pick to someone taking a quarterback. It might be the Colts even, but in this mock, they did not trade out of it, so they took Will Anderson at 3. Pick 4, the Colts take their quarterback Anthony Richardson. The Seahawks at 5 took defensive tackle Jalen Carter, and then the Lions at 6 took cornerback Christian Gonzalez. Which I think, that seems to be the way things are leaning now that they've traded Okudah. And then the Las Vegas Raiders take quarterback Will Levis at 7. So the 4 big quarterbacks now off the board. And that, of course, does leave some good options for the Falcons. If they love Devon Witherspoon at corner, they could still go that route. But obviously, Bijan Robinson is in play. That was what we did on the last mock draft. But I think that where the Falcons will go if this player is still on the board is for this player. Tyree Wilson, the edge out of Texas Tech. I think that Tyree Wilson is really perfect for the scheme. He's an ideal Cam Jordan sort of presence that can play on the edge on base downs and then kick inside as a very dangerous interior pass rusher in those passing situations. The Falcons have a coach that knows how to coach this type of player up and has done it multiple times. And Ryan Nielsen, they also have a great on-field mentor for him in Calais Campbell, who is probably like the ceiling for a player like Tyree Wilson. It's a really good scenario for Wilson, who doesn't have to come in and be the guy. I do think right away he's going to be able to provide high-level run defending across from Calais Campbell, and will really give the Falcons, I think, one of the most difficult run defenses to run on in the NFL. That's been a clear point of emphasis for this team. Pretty much everyone they've signed has been a good to great run defender, and that goes all the way from their interior defensive line additions, the edge guys, to linebacker with Caden Ellis, and of course to the secondary, Mike Hughes, Jeff Okudah, Jesse Bates, all excellent run defenders. Maybe the coverage for Okudah and Hughes last year wasn't as good, but they were excellent run defenders consistently. So they've made that a point of emphasis to really fix this run defense and make it a strength. And Tyree Wilson will give you that right away. Obviously, the length, the size, 6'6", 270, the athleticism, they're all really special. He's a really strong player. He does have a lot of work to do, a lot of developing still to do as a pass rusher, particularly if you're going to have him kick inside. Doesn't really have much of a pass rush repertoire, more of a bull rush, explosive rusher at this point. Not a lot of moves, not a lot of pass rush plan, but he doesn't need to do that from day one. The Falcons do have options. They've got Arnold Ebiketie, they've got Lorenzo Carter, they've got D'Angelo Malone, all guys who you're hoping to have a more prominent pass rushing role this year. And of course, they do have Calais Campbell out there, who's still a very capable rusher. And if you have Wilson potentially rushing from the interior more, he may be able to use that length, use that explosiveness to get some favorable matchups on the inside. So he's not someone that's going to come in and be this 10-plus sack guy as a rookie. I don't really think there's anyone in this class other than maybe Will Anderson who's going to be able to have a chance at doing that. But I think going forward, he has just an insanely high ceiling, one of the highest ceiling players in this class, period, on the defensive side of the football. And really, really good, I think, run defender. Really dangerous backside pursuit player as well. I mean, this is a guy who was a stand-up rusher at his size. Really special movement skills, really huge tackle radius. I mean, that's one of his best traits, I would say, is his ability to just stick that arm out there, those over 35-inch arms, right? And just grab guys. And he's so strong, even that hand, that it pulls quarterbacks down, it pulls running backs down all the time. He will have a role from day one. He will probably be a starter, quote unquote, because he's going to play on early downs. And then he will grow into a pass rushing role. Hopefully next year he can be a more prominent player on third downs passing situations. But even if it takes a little while, you're going to get good reps out of him. And he's going to be able to rotate in at the very least as a pass rusher to give you extra juice. So definitely a player that I'm a big fan of there. He's probably one of the only guys I would consider over Bijan. You guys know I'm big on Bijan Robinson. And, I think that this is a guy that has an excellent shot to, be one of the best running backs in the NFL. I think Tyree Wilson is another guy that has a good chance. Tyree Wilson's more of a projection than Bijan, obviously. He is at a more premium position. So I would not be shocked if they did see Tyree Wilson as a better investment with a top 10 pick than even a potential Pro Bowl running back in Bijan Robinson. But this is a guy who I think if he's here, very likely to be the selection for the Falcons. He just fits them so well, fits exactly what they need. Calais Campbell is only here on a one-year deal. Maybe he returns after that. I would be open to that, certainly, but you need someone in the wings to sort of take over that role, to be your long-term Cam Jordan sort of guy, right? And I think Tyree Wilson is the closest you can get to that in this class, especially if you're looking to invest a premium pick here at the top. Moving on to the second round, we're going to have a trade here. And this is something that I found when looking into, potential scenarios for the Falcons, which was that the Falcons under Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith have traded out of their original second-round pick in each of the last two drafts. So in 2021, they traded down from 35 to 40, and that was a move that I thought was really smart. And in 2022, they traded up from 43 to 38 to select Arnold Ebiketie. They're now, again, in that sort of same range, pick 44. I think this is another spot where they could be receiving interest in trades, trade down, scenarios in particular for people trying to come up for the guys that have fallen out of the first round, and there definitely will be some. I keep coming back to a team like the Chicago Bears, who just have so many picks, and they need a lot of talent. So I would think the Bears would be someone looking to move up for a choice player, maybe a wide receiver that's fallen out of the first round if they don't go that route in round one. Maybe a top offensive line prospect that they like if they didn't go that route in round one. I believe they went for offensive line in this mock, so getting that top prospect could be on the board. It's not going to be a lot of compensation, so the Falcons do trade down from 44 to 53, and they get pick 133, which is a fourth rounder from the Bears as well, and they send them their later seventh round pick. So 225, I believe, is the pick. So again, this is not a massive amount of compensation, not a huge deal, but it is an extra day 3 pick to replenish what the Falcons just traded for Jeff Okudah. It is earlier than that pick, about 25 spots earlier. So it's a better pick, and you get to continue, you get to sort of recoup that asset, and you get to give up a 7th rounder, which you probably didn't want to make anyway. This team is also to trade away all of their 7th round picks. I would not be surprised if they end up with no 7th round picks by the time the draft is over. Now picking, though, at 53, the Falcons do still have some very intriguing players on the board, and this is a spot, especially after a trade down, where I would love to get that offensive lineman, especially on the interior, that the Falcons haven't really added in free agency. And one of my favorites is still here, Joe TIPPMANN from Wisconsin. One of the best centers in this class. He's not on the level of John Michael Schmitz as like a slam dunk, potential Pro Bowl center, in my opinion. And he's not quite the mauler that like an Osiris Torrance is. However, I do think Joe TIPPMANN's a better athlete, and he does have good size also. This is a guy that is, 6'6", 313. So he's a big center, lots of length for that size. And someone who's capable of playing guard because he does have that size, that strength, really athletic player, natural fit for the zone scheme, really smart, capable of doing all the protections, multiple year starter, a lot of experience. I mean, he's just a guy that I think offers a lot more upside than Drew Dahlman at center. If the Falcons do like Dahlman, Joe TIPPMANN can absolutely play guard. I don't know the last time he has played guard, but certainly the size gives you a lot of hope that he's capable of doing it. And the Falcons have definitely converted a lot of centers to guards so far. I mean, Matt Hennessy, they converted to guard last year. It's pretty good. So I think TIPPMANN gives you another starter on your offensive line, whether that's at guard or center. And he'll be here on a cheap rookie contract for 4 seasons, which is important for this team because they're paying 3 of their 5 offensive linemen. Can't really afford to sink a lot more into this offensive line. So getting good rookies in here to man at least one, but ideally 2 of the spots will help their financial situation going forward. As this rebuild starts to turn into more of a contending roster, you have to figure out where you can get value, and I think the interior offensive line is definitely one of those spots where you can get starters on day 2, sometimes even day 3. Moving on to round 3, pick 75. This is a spot where I often go corner, but because of the Jeff Okudah trade, I think they can afford to wait a little bit longer on that. There are still plenty of good corners available here, so I'm pretty confident that there will be some left in the 4th round. So we're going to go with the wide receiver here. I know on Falcoholic Live on Wednesday, we took Cedric Tillman because he fell. He did not fall in this mock. I think there's maybe a 50% chance, maybe a little bit less, that he does make it all the way to 75. If he doesn't, I would immediately then switch my attention to Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. This is a repeat pick on this mock draft. I've taken Mingo, I believe, 2 times. This maybe is the second or the third time. So Mingo just makes so much sense for this team. He tested out of this world at the combine. He is a big-bodied receiver, right? Almost 6'2", 220, almost built like a running back at that size. Really good after the catch. Got a lot of nuance to his game. Good hands that really improved this last year. And he's, the most important thing, right? He's a great run blocker. No, he's a good receiving prospect. His stock has really improved after a strong Senior Bowl, after a great combine. I think there's more here with Mingo than we saw in college. This is a guy that I think is craftier and more technical than maybe a lot of people thought, considering his production. And I would be really excited to get him in here. The Falcons have shown a lot of interest in Mingo. I do think that, like I said on Wednesday's Falcon Live, I think Mingo to the Falcons is one of the picks I feel like the most certain about, as a guy that I think just makes too much sense. And where they're picking in the 3rd round, probably still going to be there. I don't expect him to be there in the 4th round. So if they want him, they would have to take him here. But it's a good fit value match. I think this is where his range sort of starts. And I would be really happy to get Mingo in here. I think he has wide receiver 2 upside. Doesn't necessarily have to do it this year. But immediately gives the Falcons another really good option in the passing game to give them some depth. He does have pretty good speed. I mean, it's not Scotty Miller speed, but it is, low 4.4 speed and great size, great run blocking. And we know the Falcons are going to they are not going to sign or trade for you if you can at least run block at an average level. And of course, Mingo does move the needle as a run blocker. I mean, he's a very physical guy. So definitely a pick that I like there. And I think this is one of the most likely ones I think we could see on actual day 2 of the draft. Next pick, round 4, pick 110. We didn't get Bijan, but that doesn't mean we can't still add to the running back room, and we should, right? The Falcons really do need to. I've said it before, but a lot of people keep mentioning, like, why do the Falcons need a running back? They have Cordarrelle Patterson. They have Caleb Huntley. Why do we need a running back? Well, Cordarrelle Patterson will be, this will be his age 32 season, and he has definitely slowed down towards the end of the season in each of the last 2 years. He needs to have a more specialized, more complementary role going forward to keep him playing at the high level that he does still play at. He's probably also going to be your main returner, and you're probably hoping that he takes on more of that role. Caleb Huntley has a torn Achilles that was suffered late in the season, and it is not out of the question that he will not play at all in 2024 or 2023. He may return at some point. I don't think it's going to be early in the season. It may be not at all this season. So really, your depth chart is Cordarrelle Patterson, who probably needs to be a rotational guy, and Avery Williams, who is your returner, your punt returner, kick returner, and a smaller running back that's not someone who can take a lot of carries. They do have some other, guys in here, right? Like BJ Baylor, who is somewhat intriguing. But they do need another running back. They need someone that can fill that Caleb Huntley role, take some carries, not make Algier carry the rock 20 times a game, because he will break down and probably not. I mean, at some point, somebody will have to step in for Tyler Algier, whether that's due to injury or exhaustion. The Falcons would be really smart to add another guy to this group. And it doesn't have to be Bijan. As much as I think a lot of us would like Bijan and how fun Bijan would be, the truth is that you don't have to go for that. You don't have to go that route. You don't even have to go that route on day 2. There are a lot of good running backs in this class. You can still add a contributor to this group. And one of the best fits, I think, on day 3, especially on the early end, is Israel Abanikanda from Pitt, who looks like an Arthur Smith running back, right? 5'10", 216, big-bodied, got that more compact frame that I honestly think is a good thing for running backs below 6 foot. The thing with Abanikanda is that he does have that size, but he tested out really well. Very similar testing to Bijan Robinson, actually. Hit that mid 4.4 40, which is really good for a running back. Hit that 41 in the vert, really explosive player. Got that long speed, right, to break off big runs. The thing with Abanikanda, and the reason why he's still around in the 4th round, is that he's not as physical as you would expect for someone of that size. I think it's a part of his game he can develop. The other thing with Abanikanda is his vision and his decisiveness. They both need work. I don't think it's bad, but I do think he leaves some yards on the field. He's a little indecisive at times. A lot of times, sometimes I think he could run with a little bit more intention, between the tackles. But I think he's a good player. And I think as a running back 2 committee member, he does offer you something that the Falcons don't really have, which is that speed, that athleticism profile. And I think you can continue to coach him up. And he does, if he can improve that vision, improve that physicality, that he does have starting running back upside. But I think, you look at this pick and you say, this is a guy that can come in and be a great complement to Tyler Algier, give the Falcons another good running back to rotate in, a guy that offers something a little bit different. And I think that pick makes a ton of sense, and he's a good fit for what this offense needs. Next 4th round pick, pick 113. This is where we're going to add that corner. Like I said, some guys are probably going to fall, and that was the case here. We do see cornerback TYREE Stevenson from Miami fall into the early day 3 range here. I think that it's definitely something we could see. I don't know which of the cornerbacks is going to fall, but again, there are so many of them that they're going to be, some will be available here. Some of the guys in that late day 2 sort of range will fall into this area of the draft, and I think the Falcons can sort of wait and see if any of the guys they like are the ones that make it here. And TYREE Stevenson is a specialist, right? This is a guy that is a big press man corner with excellent length, right? 6 foot, 198, good length. He's a man press man specialist. I think in zone he doesn't look great. He did have a really good Senior Bowl, had a good combine, tested out with some pretty good athleticism. He doesn't have the best change of direction skills. I think he's just not a very good zone corner, but with the Falcons sort of expected to go to a more man-heavy coverage scheme, I think that is a spot where he could thrive. He's not the best run defender. I think he's fine. He checks the box, but given his size, I think there's more meat on the bone there where he can become a much more complete run defender. And look, with the Falcons having Terrell, trading for Okudah, and still having Casey Hayward if they want to, TYREE Stevenson is a guy you can slot him in on the depth chart behind those guys. Let him develop this year. He could come in as a reserve. He can come in, in dime packages if needed, and let him grow. Let him develop behind these guys to potentially be a bigger contributor in 2024 when maybe Okudah is back, maybe he's not, but Hayward, no longer under contract, will be 35. So you're definitely looking for more reinforcements to the cornerback room next year, and I think Stevenson has starting upside on the outside, especially in a man coverage heavy scheme. Now for the extra pick from the Bears, round 4, pick 133. We're going to go with bolstering the linebacker depth here, go for a guy that I haven't actually mocked since the first mock I did, linebacker Mohamoud Diabate from Utah. This is a guy that I can't believe was not invited to the Combine. I mean, really great athleticism at his pro day, ended up with a 9.11 RAS. Good length, good size, right? 6'3.5", 32.5 inch arms. Had 5 sacks and 13.5 tackles for loss at Utah, which is, look, it's in the Pac-12, but I mean, it's a Power 5 school. And he's an early day 3 projection on most boards, so I don't know why he was not invited to the Combine. He deserved to be there for sure. I love Mohamoud Diabate. I think he's a great fit for the Falcons defense. He's versatile, great range, very instinctual, finding the football, strong run defender. He is a little on the small side, right? 225 is what he weighed in at his pro day. I think he needs to get up into the 230s, but look, he's a very good run defender despite his size, and as a pass rusher, he's a very dangerous blitzer. That explosiveness is big for him. He's very good at finding the football and finishing in the backfield. He doesn't take on blocks, right? He is a smaller linebacker. He's a run and chase weak side linebacker, but and I think the one part of his game that you're really looking to see improvement in is zone coverage. He just sort of drops. I don't think he has great instincts there. He's just sort of a space eater, he just covers the space. He doesn't read it super well. He doesn't impact throwing lanes as much as he could, but I think that's something you're looking to develop. His man coverage is better, I think, and maybe you can just play him there. I think, this year he's going to be a rotational linebacker and someone who's going to be a really good special teamer. And I think you develop that coverage out a little bit more. You bulk him up to that maybe 230, 235 if he can get there sort of range. And then he maybe could be a long-term contributor for you next season when, Michael Walker's contract's going to be up and we'll have to see, what the future is at linebacker. But I think he's someone that could definitely be a contributor this year, especially on special teams. And look, I think he has value as a run defender, as a run and chase guy, and as a blitzer. And we know how I think we're thinking that this defense is definitely going to prioritize the blitzing from the linebackers, just like the Saints did in New Orleans. All right. Well, we still have 1 7th rounder. Couldn't get rid of all of them, right? So round 7, pick 224. Going to go with a new face here. The Falcons have seemed to indicate that they want to continue looking for options at fullback. They did bring back Keith Smith, who's a good blocker and a really good special teamer. He doesn't really offer anything as a receiver or a runner of the football, and that's fine. He's also getting into his 30s, and he's relatively expensive for a fullback, all things considered. I mean, you're not really saving a lot of money between the most expensive and least expensive fullbacks, so we're really splitting hairs there. But in the 7th round, you could get starters at 3 positions pretty regularly, right? Kickers, punters, and fullbacks, because the NFL as a whole just doesn't value the position. And there is a pretty interesting fullback in this class. I know he has a lot of fans in the Falcons and other draft community, and that's Hunter Luepke from North Dakota State, who is sort of a unique fullback prospect in that he is more of a chess piece guy, right? More of like a Kyle Juszczyk fullback, right? Someone who actually is capable of running the football and is good in the receiving game. His blocking is sort of solid. It's not special. It's not bad. It's just sort of solid. So I think that's one thing that you would probably be hoping he could improve at the NFL level. But he is much more of a chess piece. And I do wonder if Arthur Smith and Fontenot and this offense will value his ability to sort of be a mismatch guy, sort of be a secret weapon type of player, sort of like, Pat DeMarco was back in 2016, 2017, those days. As opposed to just being a pure blocker. He's probably not going to be the special teams player that Keith Smith is right away. I think, with his athletic profile, which is pretty good for a fullback, he has the potential to turn into a pretty good special teamer. But right away, I think he'll offer more on offense, like running and receiving. He was a very productive runner at North Dakota State. This guy had multiple 100-yard games as a fullback, very good yards per carry average. So he's almost a quasi running back who plays fullback. And I think if you can get the blocking to a higher level, this is a guy that could even see, the team potentially carry 4 running backs with Luepke as one of the 4 instead of carrying 4 plus a fullback. That could make the team, if he's reliable enough as a runner, this is a guy who might, you may not need to carry 4 running backs because, if you do have a bunch of injuries, Luepke can come in and carry the ball for you if needed. So you could do some interesting roster stuff with him. I do think he's a cool player. And look, most of the players you're going to get at this 7th rounder, they're going to have a 50-50 shot to make the roster, basically, if that. I think at fullback, Luepke has starting potential, and that's tough. That's tough to find this late in the draft. His biggest competition will be Keith Smith. The Falcons also brought in Clint Rakovich, who was an interesting prospect from last year's class or the year before. I can't really remember. And they still have John Rain, who they seem to like. But I think there's a clear sign that they're looking maybe to go in a different direction of fullback or at least have an open competition there. And I think Luepke is an interesting guy to add to that group, sort of a different flavor. But that's the draft, guys. Hope you enjoyed this penultimate edition, which for those who don't know what that means, it's the second to last, right? So this will be the second to last mock we'll do here on Dirty Birds and Brews. We'll, of course, have another coming out right before the draft, which is less than 2 weeks away now. It's getting closer and closer. Do appreciate everyone tuning in here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. A little tease for you guys. There's gonna be some cool stuff going on during our live draft show. During all 3 days of the draft, we'll be live on the YouTube channel. We will be also having giveaways. We'll be giving away NFL Store gift cards throughout all 3 nights of the draft. One of the giveaways will be exclusive to patrons. So definitely consider signing up for the Patreon, right? Patreon.com/Falcoholic Live for access to some cool giveaways, some cool stuff, including a exclusive patron mock draft that's going to be going on the week of the draft. And then, of course, ad-free access to all these episodes. Check out the community Discord. The link is right there. If you're watching on YouTube, it's also in the show description. Like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on the podcast audio, please do leave us that 5-star review. That really helps us out. Appreciate everyone for hanging out with us here. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Check out all of our written stuff on thefalcoholic.com. And thanks again to the Believe Podcast Network for publishing the show. I'm excited to get started working with these guys over the next few weeks, so you guys can look out for more details on that new partnership coming very soon. So until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching Dirty Birds and Brews. We'll see you next time. Have a great day, folks.